You know this just as much as me. A lot of people in the world today play it fake. A lot of people are out there pretending to be something they're not. Well, today in this video, we're going to talk about why that is, what that looks like, and why it may not be such a good idea. Hey guys, welcome to the Thriving Man podcast. I am Reese Maxwell and I do this thing with my dad. We try and help men get better with every single episode we release. And we've been doing a series on insecurity. If you have not watched that, I would recommend you go back and watch those episodes because this thing builds on itself. And we've now gotten to the final episode of the diagnosis part of this thing. We've been talking about what insecurity looks like and the various elements of it. Today we're talking about masks. Do you wear a mask? A lot of people do. It's the way that this world works. It's kind of like that guy that you hate to be with at parties that only gives you one-word answers. I don't know if you've ever met someone like that where you're like, "How you doing?" "Good." "How was your week?" "Fine." "Was work good?" "Yep." And you can't pry open and actually meet that person. You feel like there's a wall here. Well, the mask is a kind of wall that we put up. It's a kind of wall we put up a lot of times when we're faking it, when we are pretending to be something other than what we really are. So let's talk about why we do that. It's kind of a weird habit, but the first reason why we typically put on masks is because it's normal. Everyone wears masks. Social media, hello. Everyone's throwing their highlight reels out there, their personal opinions out there, but they're not going to share with you the real stuff. They're not going to be sharing the kind of stuff that they would have in a conversation with their friend. They're just projecting this image of what they are. Maybe they're projecting the image of the strong guy who gets the high PRs in the gym, or the dude that travels a lot and is a big adventurer. Like, everyone has this image they project online. And that does happen. Even celebrities, some of the most wealthy and rich and influential people that we see are faking it. They have a lot of money, so they can buy stuff. They have a lot of gifts that they use, but who are they? We don't really know the answer. We only know what they tell us. It's normal. It's normal for us online. It's normal for wealthy people. Man, unfortunately, it's normal even at social gatherings like a church. When you show up at a church on Sunday, if you ask somebody how they're doing, I guarantee you, 99% of the time, they're going to be like, "Great." Even when they're not doing great, they're going to say they're great because we've built up this culture where having a mask is more normal than being authentic. So that's the first reason we put on masks, is because unfortunately, that's the common denominator. If you walk up to somebody and are just brutally honest, they're probably going to be taken aback and a little bit uncomfortable. The second reason that we have masks is because it's how we protect ourselves. Let's be real, guys. Everyone has a little bit of a fear of rejection. You do, I do, we all do. I saw a trend online recently that had, from the perspective of a girl videoing, she called her boyfriend dumb when he made a joke. Like, he was messing with her, laughing, and she was like, "Stop it, you're so dumb." And he went, and for the rest of the video, like 2 minutes, he's just like, "Yeah." And he put up the wall. You know, we've all got it, the wall where you just kind of shut down. He felt rejected, so he threw up the wall. And it was done in jest. It was funny, but how often do we really do that? We put up this wall because we don't want to experience the pain of being rejected for who we are. Unfortunately, being real today is exceptional. It's abnormal. And if you're honest and they don't like you, that's painful. So we throw up that wall of the mask to protect ourselves. Finally, and I think this one's probably the deepest layer of this issue, a lot of times we put up a mask when we feel uncomfortable with ourselves. When we aren't sure if we like ourselves, when we aren't sure who we are, we throw up a mask because it's easier than doing the hard work of discovering yourself and seeing if that's even good. Like even me mentioning that might make you feel uncomfortable because you're just like, no, 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 no. I'm the hunting guy. That's what I do. Or no, 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 no. I'm the football guy. That's my role. Well, that may be a role you fill, but that's not who you are. That's not the core of who you are as a person. And what's unfortunate is we've got a world full of guys who just jump from role to role. They go to work and they're the jokester. They come back home and they're like the strong silent type. They go to church and they're kind of checked out back row. They're always switching between social settings and who they're shifting themselves to be. They're not actually being themselves. They're just filling a bunch of roles. Some guys do that because they don't even know who they are. And so it's just easier to hop into that role. The other unfortunate truth is some guys do that because they've decided that who they are isn't good enough. So they're going to fill the role instead of being authentic. A lot of guys are stuck in that world. So we do the masks for those three reasons. Because it's normal, because we're trying to protect ourselves, and sometimes it's because we're uncomfortable with who we are. The next question we wanted to address is, what does a mask even look like? Well, that's kind of a tough question because there's a lot of ways we can try to have a mask. One would be the funny guy. Maybe you go into a group and the first thing you start doing is making jokes, just popping them out. You're the funny person who keeps the group laughing. That could be a mask. The second one would be alpha energy. Maybe you're the guy who always sets the PRs at the gym. You're always the leader of the pack. You're like, let's go. And you gotta be the leader of the pack because that's your role. And you feel like that's who you need to be. That's another mask. Another one would be the indifferent, I don't care kind of attitude. I work with teenagers. I'm a youth pastor. And I can tell you that the person who's going off by themselves into a corner is usually the person who's most uncomfortable with who they are. Whenever people go back and check out, it's not because they think they're better than everybody. It's that they don't know what to do. And so they feel uncomfortable. So that, I don't care kind of mentality. I'm going to go in the corner and do my thing. It usually goes back to an insecurity that causes you to put up a mask. Another one would be being a know-it-all. The first thing you do is say, like, I like this. And then he has to show you why he knows more about that subject than you do. Or he loves getting in debates just so that he can win the debate. The know-it-all personality, that's a mask. Some people even go into a hobby as their identity. The guy who's just a football guy. That's who he is. Or he's a hunting guy. That's who he is. They have turned to that to become a mask. So those are just a couple examples of what it could look like. And I would challenge you to think for yourself, am I doing any of those or am I comfortable with where I'm at? So the final section here, and this isn't fun, but it's true. There are consequences to living with that lifestyle. When you put on a mask, you have to realize there's a cost to it. The first one is the image that you've created for yourself, that you're trying to maintain, can become its own kind of idol. You can end up becoming a slave to the image you've created because all your energy, all your attention goes to maintaining that image. Maybe if you're the know-it-all guy, you're constantly researching every single topic all the time to try and be that person. If you're the alpha guy, you're driving yourself way too hard to try and be the leader of packs you don't have any business leading. That image can become its own kind of slave master, and you'll become a slave to it if you're not careful. I don't know if you've ever met somebody who really doesn't care about opinions, not pretending like they don't care, but they feel comfortable with who they are, and so they're just not worried about it. That's a person you want to be around. And it almost seems like they enjoy a sense of freedom that you don't have. Well, that's because they're not a slave to an image that they've created. The second consequence is that our image can end up distorting our view of people. Now, stay with me here because it sounds like it's far out there, but it's really not. When you depend on the opinions of others to validate yourself, to make you feel like you're enough. You fill in this role, you make the joke, everyone laughs, and you feel good about yourself. All of a sudden, the people around you go from being humans you can connect with to things that you have to use to validate yourself. They go from being a person to being a tool in your mind. Kind of like a used car salesman. When you show up at a used car lot, the last thing you want is for a guy to come up to you and be like, "Hey, how are you? How you doing?" Because you know they don't give a rip about you. They just want to sell you a car so they can make money. We can end up being like a used car salesman if we have a mask, if we're using other people to validate ourselves. All of a sudden, they become less than human to us because every interaction is not a relationship. It's an opportunity for us to get ahead and feel better about ourselves. The final consequence is that when we have a mask and this image, it blocks intimacy. Now, I'm not talking about physical intimacy here. I'm talking about emotional intimacy. Have you ever seen a show or maybe a drama where there's all kinds of crap that happens in the show because people won't just communicate to each other? There's like these two guys that are like friends that, have betrayed each other or something like that, and they hate each other now. And really, if they just got in a room and were just honest, this thing's resolved and we're good. That moment usually doesn't happen until the very end of the movie. And so for like the whole 2 hours, you're like, you guys are so stupid. Just say how you feel. Like, tell the dude that you didn't mean to betray him, or tell the guy that the reason you didn't show up is because XYZ happened. If it's a war movie, maybe he got captured or something, or if it's a drama and he's telling a girl something, maybe he just needed to be honest with her about his feelings, get out of the friend zone or whatever. When we have this image we are trying to uphold around people, it keeps us from being real. And you have to be real to have a relationship. You have to be honest to get close to somebody. And if you've got this mask up all the time, all of a sudden you can't be honest because you're just filling a role. And unfortunately, if you've got this mask up and people try to get close to you, and even if they say they love you or, bro, I got your back, the first thing that'll pop in your mind is, well, you don't know the real me. You don't know what I've done, or you don't know how I really feel about this or that topic. All of a sudden, relationships aren't close like they should be anymore. Those are some consequences of having a mask. So as you go into this week, I want you to do, really, I guess I would call it a reflection time. And think, do you use a mask to get through your life on a daily basis? Do you have a mask that you fall back to when you get uncomfortable? And if so, you're probably in one of two categories. And I want you to ask yourself which one you're in. Are you using a mask because you just don't know who you are? Are you in the place where it's like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing or who I'm supposed to be, so I'm just going to fill this role because it's easier? If you're in that role, well, keep watching this series because we're going to dive into some practicals in the next episodes on how you can get better in that area. Or if you want to do some really deep work, you can go to thrivingman.com and do our 101 emotional course. We talk about how to kind of discover different parts of yourself in a way that's more accessible than reading a 300-page book by a psychologist. The second category is if you think that you have to fulfill a role because you're not enough. If you have looked at yourself, you see yourself, and you've decided, I'm left wanting. I'm not a good enough person. I'm going to be rejected for who I am. Well, then you definitely need to keep watching this series because we're going to start talking about the journey of conquering that sense of insecurity. You don't have to feel like you're not enough. You don't have to use other people to validate yourself. You can be free. You can be that person that just doesn't have to worry about it. In the very next video, it's going to be talking about making a change, the first step to conquering your own insecurity. So we've discussed why the mask is not a great option. Let's go ahead and reflect on how we can take the mask off and begin this journey of conquering our own insecurities. Man, thank you so much for joining me for this video. If you've watched to this point, thank you. That's awesome. I'd love for you to subscribe to this YouTube channel or podcast if you're listening to this, and go ahead and click that notification button. We want to be able to keep good content going to you in a timely manner. Thank you again. See you in the next episode.